Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of Tate's Takes. Now, we are almost through with week 6 of the NFL season. We had some, Alex didn't wake up Saturday morning, and I had some travel Sunday, so we kind of had a hard time getting through it this weekend. We're recording this right before the game Monday night, after all of the Sunday games, week 6. Uh, and I just wanted to talk about some of my biggest takeaways. But like I said, we always thank y'all for listening in. So, my first biggest takeaway, and this is going back to Thursday night because we didn't get to talk about this game, was Russell Wilson just isn't it for the Denver Broncos to me. And I mean that in two ways. First of all, I don't think he is their biggest problem right now. I think they have a real culture issue. I think the defense, even though the Chiefs didn't perform like some people thought, the defense has been just abysmal all year. But Russell Wilson isn't the solution either. He's played statistically better. He hasn't been like a bottom 5 quarterback in the league like he probably was last year. So I think they are going to be in a total teardown. And here is my question for you, Alex. Do you think Russell Wilson has played well enough this season that he is tradable?
I have to think the answer is going to be no. Like, statistically, you can look at it and say he's been better this year than he was last year, like significantly better. But we've also seen him make horrible, horrible mistakes, and he does not have the athleticism that he used to at all. And I wish that they would acknowledge that he needs more work in just processing and really refinding his pocket presence because his escapability's gone out the window, to where he focuses less on the actual execution. Because I think we see he's given a script of a play that feels right and everything works for him, still executes pretty well, and that's why we're seeing him have a moderate bounce back year. But I think that it's just the processing that needs to get better as he ages into a quarterback that's not Lamar Jackson. It's
Right.
you know
I want to touch on that. So I agree that the script has been helpful to him. I definitely give Sean Payton more credit for that than Russell Wilson. And I think Sean Payton, after taking some time off, has left a little bit to be desired as a coach this year. But I think the script, I think out of the gate, that is why they have been so successful, because Russell Wilson has never been a particularly great pocket passer. The magic of Russell Wilson was he had that escapability. He had kind of this improvisation, could run around and throw one of those moon balls 50 yards down the field that just hit someone right in the bucket. You know what I mean? So I think, like I said, I think Sean Payton to me gets more credit for that. And I think that is why we have seen such collapses from the Broncos in general, right? Now, I do think he's tradable. I think people have seen enough. And what we have seen across sports is there is almost no such thing as an untradeable player, right? Like, I think about basketball with Russell Westbrook, think Kyler Murray even, and Matt Ryan. There's a lot of guys that get traded that you just wouldn't think would be tradable players. And I think almost anybody is tradable. Whether, I'm not saying you're going to get a first round pick for Russell Wilson right now, but what may happen is someone just takes a flyer and trades a 7th round pick swap for him, and the Broncos get off the contract. Because one thing I do know, like I said, I don't think he's been necessarily the biggest problem, even though the eye test would tell you Russell Wilson's been bad this year. And he has lost in some games in some big spots. He's played really, really, really bad in clutch moments, which he made such a living and kind of built his legacy on being clutch for a long time. So it's really odd to watch. But I do think Sean Payton is going to look for someone to throw under the bus. And I don't think the coaching staff that he just hired is going to be the ones that get fired. I think he's going to bench Russell Wilson at some point this season. And I think we're going to see them move on for Russell Wilson. And I do think there's going to be a team that trades for him. And just off the top of my head, maybe a team like Pittsburgh, who's not really going to be so bad that they can go get one of these high-level quarterbacks in the draft, but that they don't totally believe in Kenny Pickett. Even, and we may talk about this game here in a sec, but the Saints or the Bucks, who are going to be pretty good in that division, or the Falcons, who are going to be pretty good in that one division, but they don't have the quarterback play maybe to get them over the top. Baker, I like more than those other two quarterbacks right now. But that's where I think the Broncos are at, because I think it's more. I think it's a lot more than Sean Payton signed up for or was thinking he was going to sign up for, where it's like, okay, if I come in and fix the quarterback, we're going to make the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game. I think it's a total teardown. I don't think they have the roster that people thought they did a couple of years ago. And I think Russell Wilson is a project that's just not going to mesh well with Sean Payton, what he wants to do on offense, which is rhythm, which is having a quarterback go through his progressions quickly. And that is not what Russell Wilson is. Yeah. So
I have a question. Do you remember what Russell Wilson's contract is?
A lot.
So you're not that's my thing, is I don't think people are going to be biting on a trade for Russell Wilson just because it's a 5-year, $242.5 million contract that you are.
I agree. I know it's an astronomical number. I'm just saying there's a lot of guys that you wouldn't think would be tradable that get traded. That's all I'm saying about it. And
the thing that I have to push back on a little bit is that you're going to take that money from Russell Wilson over Kyler Murray. I would rather take Kyler Murray.
I would rather have Kyler Murray too. I don't disagree.
You've also got, somebody's
more than one team may try to trade for a quarterback, though.
Some teams might try to go and get Jimmy Garoppolo because they believe theirs is the magic sauce.
I would rather have Russ than Jimmy G. I'll say that. You're looking at me like you would rather have Jimmy G. Jimmy G just threw out his back again. Okay, Jimmy G is not a solution in the postseason or through his.
There's Russell Wilson. They're both bad, and the thing is, we have so many players that are quarterbacks coming in, quarterbacks still on rosters that you could trade for with better cap hits. It's just. There's no way that you look at that number and
listen to me. Everything that you're saying makes sense. Okay. You know what didn't make sense? Deshaun Watson getting $235 guaranteed $1 million. You know what happened? Deshaun Watson got the contract. I'm not saying it's going to make a lot of sense for someone to trade for Russell Wilson. I'm just saying I don't think he's untradeable. That's the key that I'm saying. I wouldn't trade for Russell Wilson. That is not what I'm saying. If I was the GM, I'm a Cowboys fan. I am not advocating the Cowboys go out and let Dak walk at free agency and you bring in Russ. That is not what I'm advocating for. If I was a fan of the team that brought him in, I'd be frankly a little disappointed probably, but I also understand depending on the coach, okay, the Giants paid Daniel Jones $40 million. I don't know that I wouldn't rather have Russell Wilson on his contract than Daniel Jones on his contract for the next couple of years,
Yeah.
No, I'm not, it's I don't know what that does for anybody, me saying that, but I'm just, it's there are things that don't make sense. It's depending on the coach, depending on the style of offense you want to run, someone may think they can work with him. And I think he's put out enough good film and good numbers this season where after last year, I would have agreed with you. I would have thought no one's touching that dude with a 10-foot pole, but I think we may see someone take a swing on it. Like I said, it wouldn't be someone that's going to be bad. I'm going to talk about the team here in a sec, but the Patriots are so bad, they're going to get a big time quarterback. So it's not going to be a team like that. It's going to be a team like the Steelers who are going to win too many games, but don't have their answer. Or I honestly think the Falcons be a good option. That's the one. They got a bunch of cheap offense players. They got a bunch of rookies. He is better than Desmond Ritter, who I don't think is an NFL quarterback. Like Russ is still after the season to be an NFL quarterback and a starter. It's like Desmond Ritter. I am not convinced. So
Could be. We'll have to see.
that's all I'm saying.
If anybody takes you up on that, God help that franchise, because
Right. Yeah.
it's not good. They're locked in for like 3-4 more years of it if they do, which is
Right.
bad.
On the other side of that game, on the other side of the ball, I still think the Chiefs are fine. I think that they're winning games, and I've talked about this before. They're winning games without playing their best. I think is really important in the NFL. And all of a sudden, you look up, it's like, okay, they're tied for the best record in the league. It doesn't feel like they've played very well, And I think that's really important. I do think they may try to trade for a receiver, but I also think I like Rashee Rice, and to the detriment of my dynasty fantasy football league, I like Rashee Rice. I went with all the other Kansas City receivers, not to go too far behind the curtain, but I think he looks like he's got a lot of promise. He looks physically gifted. He's a big guy. Well, he's not super tall, but like he's a thick athlete. I think he really, really looks like the kind of guy who could be the number one receiver. He's just young, and rookies have a really hard time with Andy Reid's system anyway. So the fact that he already looks like he could be their best receiver this week, I think is important. So if he can develop, by the time the playoffs roll around, you have him and Kelsey and, the running game. I think they're going to be fine. Like I said, I wouldn't be opposed if they wouldn't got Jerry Jeudy or someone like that from a team that just tanking. I think that could help, but I also think it looks like they have a guy who could be a number 2 receiver in the NFL in Rashee Rice. Maybe a number 1, maybe not, but at least a pretty good number 2. And they have a 1 right now in Kelsey. So that was my, on the other side of the ball, I still think the Chiefs should be the favorite to win the AFC, but I want to talk about the team who is really fun. Like I said, I think the Chiefs should be the favorites, but the Dolphins are awesome, man. I mean, I think they're really, really fun to watch. They light up the scoreboard. I think the defense isn't great, but I think sometimes it's underrated. A team that has such a good offense like the Dolphins, you give the other team so many opportunities because you score so much that you don't keep the ball. I think sometimes the numbers get skewed for these defenses on a team that has a great offense like Miami. My question for you about the Dolphins, are you worried that when the weather gets cold, if they had to go to Kansas City for a playoff game or to Buffalo or somewhere else for a playoff game, it doesn't look like they're going to have to go to Buffalo, but they might still, not having the tiebreaker already. Would you be worried about how their game and their style of play would translate to the postseason and to these cold weather months we have coming up?
So it's a great question. I want to kind of circle back to what you mentioned. The way they play offense, racking up so many points, it means that the other team's just going to get a very good chance to like stay in games or look like they're staying in games because they're going to have so many chances with the ball. And that's one of the double-edged swords to being the fastest team in the NFL, is that you score points fast. And if somebody can even limit you a little bit on scoring points, maybe has a good enough run game to keep it on the ground for a lot longer, you start to feel some of that desperation, and those plays come out where it's like, okay, Tua, you've got to throw it down the field as quickly as you possibly can,
Sure.
which 9 times out of 10 works. But we've already seen them get beat by a team that can also score a lot of points,
Right.
that can also wear down the clock, wear down your defense,
Right.
and has a stout enough defense to kind of limit you in what you do whenever they lost to the Bills, right? So like, that's one of those where and it's strange for me to say this, especially after having beat you this week on fantasy, because of Raheem Mostert, who I talk mad nonsense about, who
Yeah,
won me.
you were not a Raheem Mostert guy preseason. I told you he's pretty good, man. He's very good.
He's very good, but you don't see them relying too heavily on him putting together, all right, 5 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, 5 yards again, like putting together those long drives that inevitably end up with a touchdown, because they still have Waddle, they still have Hill, they still have everybody that they need,
Right.
but they're just putting up too many points too quickly, or going 3-and-out too quickly. And so I think that would probably be a little bit of a drawback come time to play in Kansas City, who we, like the Bills did to them. We know that they can put up points. Kansas City, one of the best defenses in the entire league right
Yeah.
now.
Which is
And
weird to say, but yeah, they're probably a top 5 defense in the league.
Pacheco is a stud and a half. That man can run all over everybody, catch passes, run from the flat, get 4 yards on you, and 10 minutes go by of game time, and Kansas City's on one drive, and it is devastating for a team.
The offense is sitting getting cold. Tua, I worry somewhat about Tua in the cold weather because just historically, these little quarterbacks don't thrive when the weather gets cold. It's harder to throw the ball. It's harder to throw the ball deep. I think that might throw off some of their timing and their accuracy, their kind of precision routes. They're so great at, one of the things. So, and to your point, I think it was last night, the Eagles had a drive, or yesterday, they had a drive that was 19 plays and went for a touchdown. The Eagles, 19 plays. Now that's, even for the Eagles, that's a lot of plays on one drive, but that's not how the Miami Dolphins really play. They're looking for more chunk plays, more 7-10 play drives, and score pretty quick. And I do think it's a little bit of a bad sign that the one really good team they've played kind of beat the brakes off of them. It wasn't a particularly close game. It was on the road. It was against Buffalo, who can play really, really well. And I think when they get into a game where they don't have the best quarterback, they have someone who can match them offensively, who's better on defense, because a lot of these teams are going to be playing in the playoffs are going to be better on defense. And they feel at times unbalanced. And I love Mike McDaniel. I think this offense is fun to watch. I think they should be, I'll say this about the Dolphins. I think they're going to be the 1 or the 2 seed. And I think they should be favored to win their home playoff games, meaning they're going to make a conference championship game. That's what I think. No, and then I think this is just me kind of going, prediction time here. But I think probably what's going to happen is Kansas City's going to be the 1 seed, Miami's going to be the 2 seed, and they're going to lose in Arrowhead with a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And the Chiefs are going to go back to the Super Bowl. That's what I really think is going to happen. Now, could I see a team like Cincinnati coming in and beating them in Miami once they get rolling? Oh, yeah, sure. Because Burrow, I think, is awesome, and we're going to talk about Burrow later in the podcast today. But I think they should be favored to be the 1 or 2 seed and make the conference championship game right now. That's kind of where I'm at in Miami. But I do worry that if Tua misses a few games in the regular season and they have to go on the road, they could have kind of a disappointing end of their season at some point.
Yeah, I definitely see that happening with it being Arrowhead Invitational, and
Right.
just being.
You said it, not me. Okay, so I'm going to move us on to another team in the division who is on the opposite end of the spectrum on offense goes. The Patriots look bad, man. And Mac Jones, I think, is inches away from being benched. He keeps turning the ball over. He's scored as many touchdowns for the other team this season as he had for the Patriots so far, I think, still. But here's a theory I'm going to float to you. And I know that for everybody, this is a little different than how we usually do our podcast. Usually we spend a little more time on each team we're talking about our game, but I wanted to touch on a few after this week 6. But anyway, here's my theory. In a way, I think Mac Jones has been so bad it might have bought Bill Belichick a little bit of time because they're going to get a high draft pick, like, maybe top 5 the way things are going. Where I think, and here's my question to you: do you think it's possible that they give Bill Belichick a little bit more time as the coach to draft a quarterback and see, like, they get a top 5 pick, say they bring in Drake May, just off the top of my head, or Michael Penix? You think they give him an extra year to see, okay, let's get a real quarterback back there. Let's get Michael Penix or Drake May, and Belichick, you get another year to see if we can put something together, on all, like, see if we can win some game. What do you think the future looks like for the Patriots move forward?
That's all well and fine, and I think it would be right if Bill wasn't picking his for
and
his
that's
entire roster. Like,
the thing. And I talked to my dad about this too, and this is why my theory may be a little flawed, is Bill Belichick, I still think, is a great game day coach, but the personnel is terrible on offense right now. They don't have a single good player on offense, really. Rhamondre Stevenson's probably their best player, and Zeke looks like he may be a more explosive running back at this point, which is, as a Cowboy fan, that's not what you wanted. And are they gonna? The problem with my theory is, are they going to allow Bill to draft another quarterback? It's like, say they get a number 4 pick, are they going to let Bill make the pick, or are they going to bring in someone different who's got an offensive mind, who's a young guy? I know you have some offensive coordinators you like for head coaching jobs, may even be enemy. The Washington team is pretty fun. Sam Howell sure seems to be playing over his skis a little bit, and like really putting up some numbers. And you bring in a guy like that, say, okay, we're going to shift to offense, the enemy, whoever's new head coach, offensive guy, you draft your quarterback that you like, and we're going to turn things around. So that's door number 2. Door number 1, Bill, we're going to let you have another shot at it. You get your guy. Mac Jones was a bad pick, but door number 2 is no, we're not going to let you do that.
I think there's a third door where they say, all right, Bill, you're still in charge of this ship, but you are not making the personnel decisions any longer, which I think is probably where it's actually going to go. Because you have to be stupid to not want Bill Belichick to coach you on game days. Like, no matter how bad, like, the Patriots are doing, Bill would probably go somewhere else and just, like, completely take over the league again if he wasn't making the calls. So at least you have to try to, like, all right, we're gonna put somebody in charge of personnel because we don't want you drafting somebody like Dylan Gabriel, which love
Dylan Gabriel. Yeah,
that's what Bill would do. He'd be like, this guy, he's got clutch gene. It's just like, no, just take the easy answer. Like, oh, we have no depth at wide receiver. What's the easy answer? Going and getting a true, proven wide receiver, one, so that our quarterback, whoever it is, definitely not Mac Jones next year, can actually throw the ball to somebody. But no, Bill's got some weird thing about, like, not getting actual wide receivers.
So if I was a Patriots fan, your option that you're talking about is what I would be hoping for, but it is well documented that Bill Belichick is not willing to surrender the personnel power. And I think you're totally right. If he went to coach, like, if, just humor me for a second, if he got fired and as a Cowboy fan, if he went to the Cowboys and we had the same personnel, I would be hyped. I'd be like, oh, we may win the Super Bowl, literally, as good as he is at clock management. We have good personnel. Now, I can't imagine him working for Jerry Jones. Just like I said, humor me for a second. I think you're totally correct in that if the personnel was there, he's still a great game day coach. But I don't think in New England you can have one without the other, unfortunately, for the New England fans and for, like, Mac Jones. And, I think it's, I mean, watching the Mac Jones, it's just so funny. He just really not playing good football right now. It's you feel for him a little bit because he's had a lot of success other places, but that's what the money's for, as they say.
I don't feel for him. He's like the dirtiest player in the league right now as a quarterback. Like I realize like listening back to a couple of podcasts, we can get a little harsh on this little thing.
Right.
We kind of grill some people, and like both of us are very soft men in their 30s now, like
Speak for
just
yourself. 29.
we, we like if somebody put us on a field and said, "Hey, catch this ball coming at you, try not to get murdered by the other team," we couldn't do it.
Probably
But
break my rib immediately.
we can also use our eyes to say, like, yeah, but some of these people kind of deserve the slander, and Mac Jones is one of those. He has always complained about everything. He's like, give it. There have been sources that came out that said, like, the feeling with Mac Jones is you can take garbage, and if you have a amazing chef, it doesn't matter because it's still gonna taste like garbage if you make food with garbage ingredients. Which, if any other quarterback said that about their head coach, you would think that there would be some kind of acknowledgement about that. Well, their head coach slash GM, who's controlling all of their personnel. You'd think that, especially Bill Belichick of all people, would put him third behind Zappy and some guy from South Boston, but like it's not happening for some reason. I think Mac Jones must have dirt on a lot of people because he's still getting to play while playing terribly. Like, at least he has dirt on Bill Belichick. I don't know, but it's
No, I
absurd.
can't figure that out for the life of me because Zappy looked pretty good last year, and Mac, what is it? Is it Bill getting stubborn because he used a first round pick on him? Which he usually isn't one to hang on to personnel if they're not performing. But I really, I really don't know. It's just
As
I
the
don't know.
pundit Kevin Reynolds says, it's just the turnovers. But the thing with Mac Jones is he's only giving you turnovers. So
Right.
yeah, it's just the turnovers and literally nothing else.
It's like if I was trying to diet and ate a triple bacon cheeseburger before bed every night and wasn't losing any weight. And I was like, oh, but it's just the triple bacon cheeseburger. It's like, yeah, man, you can't. Sorry, something going on outside, but you can't eat that before bed every night. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you can't keep throwing pick sixes and win the game. Yeah, and I know Bill Belichick hates Mac Jones too. It's like I really don't think they get along very well.
Mm-mm.
Okay, another quarterback that lost yesterday, and this is not someone me or you have talked a lot about on this podcast, and we especially haven't given a particularly hot take or really strong opinion yet. But I'm just gonna ask you right away before I even talk about it. What do you make of Brock Purdy?
Okay, so it is
Make
it
of
is
that guy.
it is fair to say that Brock Purdy is a system quarterback who is doing exceptionally well in his system. Like,
Okay.
he's, I don't know if we should be calling him elite, and like he might not be, but like I don't know if we should even be banning that term around because we knew that almost any we were talking about if Sam Darnold gets to play again, who's
I play good, right? Okay. I'm
a
gonna go
bud.
ahead and put that because I thought that was so marvelously well said that like that's exactly what it is. He is performing awesome in the system. And I think yesterday we saw Cleveland without McCaffrey, without Debo. It's like, okay, the system isn't gonna totally scheme guys wide. It's not gonna totally work today. What is Brock Purdy gonna do? and he didn't look particularly good. So,
I
you
think
know,
I think that's just the thing. And like shout out to Cleveland defense. I hate you, but you guys are doing a good
no,
job.
yeah, we hate Cleveland, but they have been awesome on defense so far.
Your
I mean,
defense
they've been fantastic on defense.
but like you're exactly right. Is all right, Brock Purdy, ball is literally in your hands.
Right.
You have to show us like why you deserve another contract
Right.
instead of just riding on with a roommate getting paid $900,000 in San Francisco a
Right.
year. And yesterday he didn't do that. Like it
And if you ask me today, what do I think they're going to sign Brock Purdy to an extension when this time comes? I'd probably say no. And I think
probably
they're probably just going to roll the dice on Baker, Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins in his old age at that point. It's like I think they'd probably just roll with someone else like that. But
whoever
I have a hard time with Brock Purdy because I don't want to take away from what he's done because he's been awesome, and like, they beat the Cowboys by 1,000,000 points and they've been blowing teams out. And he, through 5 weeks, basically had played perfect football. So it's like, okay, what do you want the guy to do? It's like there's not, you could put Patrick Mahomes back there and through 5 weeks, they wouldn't have looked any different. It's like, okay, it's like, what, it's like he's not doing, there's nothing Shanahan is asking of the quarterback that anyone else would be doing right now. So it's like that's where it's a little tricky for me to talk about him. But like, do I think he could be doing what CJ Stroud is doing in Houston? I don't. Do I think he could go be Joe Burrow on the Bengals? I don't. Do I think he's as good, as Trevor Lawrence or Herbert? No, not really. It's like, do I think he's a franchise quarterback? Yeah, I probably do. I think he may be kind of on the bottom tier of that, but like, it kind of depends on what you define franchise quarterback. A lot of people would say Daniel Jones is a franchise quarterback. I think Brock Purdy's shown that he's better than Daniel Jones. Derek Carr in a lot of people's minds still a franchise, okay, but he's on that kind of level, and probably the lead of that level. It's like in even Dak Prescott, I know is a franchise quarterback by almost all estimations. I think Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy are very similar. I think they're very similar. I think Brock throws a little better ball. Dak maybe has a little bit more intangibles and at least at one point was a better athlete, though I don't know if Dak's a better athlete anymore. It's like, but I think yesterday was somewhat of a red flag for San Francisco because everything isn't always going to be perfect. And like when you play the Eagles in the playoffs, even if Brock doesn't throw out his elbow on the first play of the game, they're still going to make you uncomfortable. And they're not going to be like some of these other teams that roll over that the script is going to work the whole time on, and the scheme is just going to have guys wide open. There's going to be some resistance at some point. And I think that is where San Francisco get in some trouble. And I think the scheme is so well, like if you told me San Francisco won the Super Bowl this year, I wouldn't be totally surprised. I'm not gonna lie to you. They look good enough where it's like with Brock Purdy, I think he plays well enough and doesn't turn it over for, in so many games. It's like, okay, he makes in the conference championship game, puts together a great drive and makes two or three big time throws, and they win the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be totally surprised, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they lost on the road in Philly again in the playoffs or something like that, So,
yeah, I think to that point, what we're seeing is some teams coaching have just more experience adjusting in game.
yeah.
And for as genius of mind as Shanahan is, which he really is, like absolutely one of the best coaches in the league right now, if you get him off his script a little bit, it's really hard for him to kind of adjust in real time to
As well documented. If people don't know, Shanahan does not make in-game adjustments very well. That's kind of been something he's historically been maybe his downfall. And to be honest, maybe the reason he hasn't won a Super Bowl as a coordinator or a head coach yet is because of the in-game adjustments. If anyone figures it out, I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but if anyone figures it out and kind of gets them in adverse situations, they have a hard time adjusting. And to be honest, some of that is probably because they don't ever pay for a high level quarterback. And, I think they maybe thought they had one in Jimmy G. That was a mistake on the personnel department, and then, with Brock Purdy, I think what we saw yesterday is like he's probably not a guy that you can just go win us the game at the end very often. He maybe can do that every once in a while. And like I said, if he did it once in the playoff run or something like that, wouldn't totally surprise me, but that's not something Kyle wants to ask of Brock Purdy, I think. You know what I mean? That's not a situation they want to be in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I don't know. I think Brock Purdy's good. I don't think he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. Who do you think are?
Okay, so here we go. Tate's top 5. We did the NFL teams last week, and I think Alex almost had a heart attack when I showed up my list. This one I think you will agree with me a little bit more on. So here is Tate's top 5 quarterbacks in the league. Alex, I'm going to start with 1 and 2 because I think we're going to see eye to eye on these. Okay. And then I'm going to tell you the problem that I had when making this list. So 1, I have Patrick Mahomes. 2, I have Burrow. And here was my criteria. It is not how they're playing right now. It is if everyone was healthy with a reasonable expectation of injury, who would I want for a playoff run? Okay. That was my criteria for the list. So I think Patrick, we don't even have to talk about that one, right? Patrick's number 1. Burrow, I think, has shown enough over the past few seasons that he's firmly the second best quarterback in the league to me. And that left me with 3 to 5. Do you disagree with those two at all before I keep going?
No. I think those are exactly.
Yeah, I think we're pretty set on Burrow and Mahomes being 1 and 2, and kind of there's a gap between Mahomes and Burrow, and to me, there's a little gap between Burrow and whoever 3 would be too. So here is my problem making this list: is the 3 to 5. That's 3 spots. There's 6 guys that I think all have a case to be in the top 5. And you can't put 8 guys in your top 5. That's not how a top 5 works. So it's not Tate's top 8, it's Tate's top 5. So I'm going to go through the 6 guys that I considered and the pros and the cons very quickly. So I had Tua that I considered. He's incredibly accurate. He runs that system better than anybody. He's one of the best precision passers in the game. He's not the best athlete. He's not the biggest guy. And the injuries are an obvious concern if you're going to trust him for a whole playoff run. Lamar is someone I think should be considered for this. He is probably the most unique quarterback in the league, but we both question his ability to make big throws at the end of big games. Jalen is a little bit similar to Lamar. I think he's shown his ability to make big throws in big games, but he also doesn't have the highs that Lamar does on a consistent basis. Lamar at his best, I think, is better than Jalen Hurts. It's getting closer, but I still would have Lamar, his A+ game being a little higher than Jalen's A+ game. But I love Jalen's intangibles. I think his leadership is just off the charts, whatever you want to call it, the intangible stuff. And we've also seen him play his best in the biggest spot. And that was the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. Even though they lost, maybe played his best game as a pro. Josh Allen, I think, should be considered for this list. Problem with Josh Allen is you don't know which Josh Allen you're going to get. Josh Allen may look like the best player on the planet some weeks, and then he may turn the ball over 4 times to the Jets in a week. You know what I mean? So which Josh Allen are you going to get? Trevor Lawrence, I think, should be considered for this list. I call him baby Josh Allen because sometimes you don't know which Trevor Lawrence you're going to get. I think he has really, really high level potential. I think he makes awesome throws. I think he can stand in the pocket. He's a big guy and spread the ball as well as anybody. And he also plays below his ability some weeks, to say the least, right? Justin Herbert, I think, was the last guy that should be considered for this list. The problem I have with Justin Herbert on this list is this was similar to Peyton Manning. Now, I'm not saying Justin Herbert's as good as Peyton Manning, but Peyton Manning didn't always seem to have the extra gear to go to in the playoffs. I worry about that with Justin Herbert, where you have to have that extra fire, that extra it factor in these big games that we have seen in spades from both Burrow and Mahomes. Both, no one would question that kind of extra gear for either of those guys, the competitiveness, whatever you want to call it, whatever you think factors into it. That's what I worry about with Justin Herbert. And as good as his arm is, he doesn't always like to push the ball down the field. So those were the 6 guys I considered for this 3 spots. I'm going to start with number 5. And Alex doesn't like this. I have Trevor Lawrence at 5. I have him above, like I said, I have him, Trevor, at number 5. I think he's just got enough upside. I think he's shown through adversity in the playoffs, he can put together a historical performance. I like Trevor Lawrence at 5. I have Josh Allen at 4. The reason being because in the playoffs, especially in the AFC, you need a high ceiling to beat the 2 guys at the top. And I don't know that that some of these other guys that I considered have the ceiling to beat the top 2 guys. And number 3, I still have Jalen. Jalen hasn't played particularly well this season. I think, like I said, he showed the ability to put together a great performance in the biggest spot. His best game as a pro was in the Super Bowl. I think he's shown improvement every year, except for maybe this one, but Super Bowl hangover, whatever you want to call it. I think he's shown drastic improvements as a passer in his career and continues to improve. And I think the tush push or brotherly shove is worth a little, I think that's an important aspect of this, where you have you get to 4th and 1, it's a first down, and I think that's pretty important and should play a factor. And like I said, the intangibles, he is, of the 6 guys that I considered for the last 3 spots, the best locker room guy, probably by a margin, actually, between those 6 guys. So that's what I have. I have number 5, Trevor Lawrence, number 4, Josh Allen, number 3, Jalen Hurts, 2, Joe Burrow, and 1, Patrick Mahomes. Alex, what is your issue with my list?
Not much of one, because yeah, Lamar Jackson.
Lamar, Tua, and Herbert were the guys I left off that had, like I said, I really struggled. I actually thought all 3 of those guys had a strong case. If someone had them in their top 5, I wouldn't be mad at it, especially Tua or Lamar's played great this season,
I hate that I'm about to say this. I think Tua is probably in Trevor Lawrence's spot.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad. Like I said, that is not something I would be mad at, because Tua has played awesome this season. And I want to clarify, Tua, if I knew he was going to be healthy, probably was in the top 5 for me. But I think that was enough of a concern for me where it's like, okay, what if we got to go play 3 road playoff games as a team? That's where I don't trust Tua and where I want. Trevor is obviously a bigger guy, bigger athlete. That's where I had Trevor get the edge over him.
Well, I just think that it's hard to overlook how bad Trevor can be at times. Like, and that's the thing, is like, whenever we see Tua do poorly, it's not, oh, I lost 2 fumbles poorly. But oh, he got hurt, or oh, like they're just locking down the receivers, and like he doesn't really have anything to really pass. So I think that it's very tough to like split hairs on this,
Right.
but
So I agree, but I just want to bring up Trevor Lawrence threw 4 interceptions in the first half of a playoff game. How did that playoff game end?
Of course, he won.
Right.
But
He's shown the ability and the upside to make up for those mistakes. And I'm full disclosure, I almost had him 4 over Josh Allen. I think, I think Josh Allen's upside still has me have him just a smidge above him, but it's like Josh Allen's even less consistent, I think. So that's where Josh Allen's a little scary,
I think that the thing with it is if you're going to pick essentially two of the same quarterbacks, you probably shouldn't put both of them up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
If you're going to put Josh Allen,
You're right. That was kind of part of the logic too. Was like, okay, how do I have Josh Allen on the top five and not baby Josh Allen as high culture? It's like, it's just you kind of had to have both of them a little bit because they're, side of the play may look a little different, but to me, the upside versus the inconsistency was similar for those two guys to me. And one thing I will say about Trevor too is this is a small sample size. I expect with some projection, I think he's going to get a lot better as the season goes on. Kind of like what happened last year, where they, all of a sudden they've won 3 games in a row and I've looked really good a couple weeks in a row. And I expect that to continue.
Yeah. And that's why I think, like, statistically, if you're going to put two of the same type of quarterback with like super highs and super lows and like a tendency to turn the ball over while still making great plays,
right,
you're kind of flipping a coin. One of them's really going to work out in the future. One of them's probably really not. And so I think that, yeah, I would probably at this point personally prefer it to be Josh Allen, just because I think that it's a little bit longer sustained success.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah,
like,
and I just, if we were doing the start your franchise around a quarterback list, Trevor would have been 3 for me because he's younger. I think he's got more upside and has shown, like I said, he played pretty well. After he played 6 good halves in the playoffs and 1 really, really bad half. So,
yeah,
losing an Arrowhead to Patrick Mahomes there's no shame in losing an Arrowhead. It's just.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to lose an Arrowhead at some point in their career. These AFC quarterbacks, everyone's going to do it. So not a big deal. So
we're recording this on Monday night, which means that it's Monday Night Football, which means it's 8:18 right now according to my time on the East Coast, and the Cowboys and the Chargers have been playing for all of about 30 seconds. Who needs to win more?
I'm going to be quick here because I want to watch the game. The Chargers need to win more because the AFC is stacked and they play the Chiefs next week, and you can't go to 2-4 and have a shot in the AFC.
I think that it's the Cowboys because they got embarrassed in prime time, and they need something to start going right. They need to prove that they can be a good team. And I also, one thing that I was mentioning, that as you were talking through Justin Herbert's like whole ordeal, like, I think that Justin Herbert, because they're in the same division as the Chiefs, as long as they stay second to the Chiefs, as long as the Broncos and the Raiders stay down at the bottom of that division, I don't think you really need to worry about how your season goes. Like, I think that you just kind of understand you're always just going to lose to the Chiefs.
Well,
like, you're not
a wild card team.
You could be a wild, but
yeah.
I don't think that
your point that's true is they're not going to get a home playoff game because they're just unfortunately. And even if they did, it would basically be a road game because all their home games are, it's gonna be 70% Dallas fans tonight. So yeah, that point rings true. But 2-4, as good as the AFC is, I think they'd be all of a sudden in danger of missing the playoffs. And if you have Herbert, you just can't miss playoffs. So that's what I had. But we'll see. I hope the Cowboys win. As a Cowboy fan, I'm a little nervous about it, to be honest. I think the Chargers coming off, they had the bye week, they got an extra week to prepare, and Cowboys can implode. Let's watch the game. Thank you everybody for listening. We're gonna go watch this game, and we will see you all next week. Next week, we're gonna dive into some of our preseason picks and see how those are working out. So we will see everybody then. Y'all have a good one.